Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah wahdahu. والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تمسك بسنته إلى يوم الدين وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. As we were continuing, we were discussing the Aqidah of the great Imam Abu Hanifa in light of what Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah brought in his tremendous treatise entitled Al-Fatwa al-Hamawiyyah al-Kubra, by the great Imam Taqi-ud-Din Ahmad ibn Abd al-Halim ibn Abd al-Salam ibn Taymiyyah al-Harrani Dimashqi, rahimahullah. With the time now 6:55 p.m., Wednesday, November the 9th, 2022, بالتاريخ الهجري or بالتاريخ الإسلامي الهجري by the Islamic calendar. Today is technically Thursday evening, the 16th of Rabi' al-Thani or Rabi' al-Akhir, some of them call it, where the year now is 1444 after the migration of our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. As we were discussing the Aqidah of Abu Hanifa, where you find that Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah rahimahullah, that he put in the chapter, قُلْتُ. So we were speaking about what Abu Muti' al-Balkhi, his name was Abu Muti', the one who was asking Abu Hanifa these questions, his name was Abu Muti' al-Hakim ibn Abdullah al-Balkhi. And he was asking Abu Hanifa about his Aqidah in his book entitled Al-Fiqh al-Akbar. So you notice that when we stopped at, he mentioned, we were in the midst of the questions that he was asking. He said, قال وذكر الكلام في قتال الخوارج والبغاة. Go back a little bit. ثم قال قلت فما تقول في من يأمر بالمعروف وينهى عن المنكر فيتبعه على ذلك أناس فيخرجوا عن الجماعة. So we were discussing the affairs of the Qadr. That's where we stopped at. Before we move on to the affairs pertaining to Abu Hanifa's Aqidah in regards to the rulers. In regards to the rulers and his position concerning them. So we were discussing the affairs of the Qadr and that Abu Hanifa was sound in that matter. Abu Hanifa, don't lean against the wire. Just move over a little bit. That Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, was sound in the affairs of the Qadr. We was discussing how Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah even explained this matter and given more details and clarity about the affairs concerning the divine decree of Allah Ta'ala. But before we continue, we said that Abu Hanifa in these matters were what? Sound. Based upon what Abu Muti' al-Hakim ibn Abdullah al-Balkhi asked him in this question, or asked him in his book, The Greatest Fiqh. We said that the affairs concerning Jabriyah, as you'll find there are Muslims out there that fell into this type of deviation. That if they was to commit something evil, they would blame it on Allah. Or they would say that I was forced. As we said that this matter is considered a great discrepancy and problem in the belief of the Qadr of Allah. As Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah said that this baliyah, this atrocity here, was originated from the devil himself. You'll find that he put in his poetry, as he said in Majmu' Fataawa, he says, سؤالك يا هذا سؤال المعاند مخاصم رب العرش بال البرية فهذا سؤال الخاصم الملأ العلا قديم به إبليس أصل البلية. You'll find that Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah, he wrote in the poetry that a questioner asked him a question. And he said, سؤالك يا هذا سؤال المعاند معاند رب العرش بال البرية. He said that the question here, or the question is someone who's mu'anid, he's stubborn. A person who's arguing and debating with the Lord of the throne, the originator of the creation. Now listen to this. فهذا السؤال الخاص للملأ العلا قديم به إبليس أصل البلية. So keep in mind that we're speaking about the affairs of the Qadr, where there are certain people that used to believe that the affairs of the creation, their actions were forced upon them, that they had no choice in the matter. And like you will find in these days and times, it's still what? It's still present. It's present within those who are upon al-Ash'ariyah, al-Kullabiyah from the Muslims. As we talked about this last class, it was called Kasb al-Ash'ari. As we discussed this. But anyway, we'll continue. But at any rate, those Muslims that believe that their actions were forced upon them, meaning they had no choice in the matter, meaning Allah written it down, and for that reason, whatever I fell into, whether it be of good or evil, I was forced to do it. So Shaykh al-Islam said, this question here, in which you'll find in the times of old, who argue within the dwelling place in the highest heaven, which is Iblis, the devil himself, as you'll find that this is the what? Asl al-Baliyah. That his question, rather you'll find his stubbornness, if you want to say, or his arrogance, that his arrogance and his belligerence, he's the one that what? Blamed Allah for why he became cursed. As we talked about in Surah Al-A'raf, where Iblis that he said in that ayah, in the second page of Surah Al-A'raf, فَبِمَا أَغْوَيْتَنِي, because of you misleading me. So you'll find that Iblis, he was the originator of this ideology of blaming Allah for why he fell into evil. And anyone else that comes after Iblis, you'll find that certain people out there will commit acts of evil and they will blame it on Allah, that I was forced. So they will commit heinous crimes and all types of atrocities, whether it be, let's just say, polytheism. The greatest of all evils is to commit polytheism with Allah Ta'ala, and they will blame it on Allah. And you'll find that from the mushrikeen who actually fell into this. If you look in the book of Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says the ayah, وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ أَشْرَكُوا لَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ مَا أَشْرَكْنَا وَلَا آبَاؤُنَا وَلَا حَرَّمْنَا عَلَى مِن دُونِهِ مِن شَيْءٍ. Allah ta'ala says in this book that those who commit polytheism, they say, if Allah willed, we would not have committed polytheism. Us nor our forefathers. Nor would have been made unlawful upon us besides that, or besides him, anything in the least. So you'll find that the mushrikeen blame the qadr of Allah in order to justify the evil. You'll find that their so-called evil salaf or evil predecessor in this matter is the devil. So the first person that came with this type of way of thinking in order to justify the evil by using the qadr of Allah as an argument was the devil himself. So the shaitan, he's the one that originated the belief of what they call Jabr, or what they call Jibriyah, where they believe that the actions are forced upon the servant, that he had no choice. Notice that Shaykh al-Islam said that the origin of this ideology or this type of evil conviction originated from the devil, Iblis. He's the Asl Baliyah. He was the what? The origin of those who committed this type of way of thinking, or this evil what? Corrupt way of thinking. And those who embark upon the same belief, likewise, have their what? Have their portion of following their so-called evil predecessor in that, which is the devil. So anyone that comes and says, I did this, and if Allah willed, I would not have done it. No matter what it is, whatever it be of polytheism, whatever it be of magic, sorcery, fornication, killing. If you try to justify it by using the qadr of Allah, your so-called predecessor in that is the devil. Because the devil tried to use this excuse to justify his evil when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made him the accursed. You'll find that Iblis in the ayah tried to blame Allah. Like it's Allah, your fault. You've written shaqawa, and you've written for me to be from the wicked, it's your fault. Based upon that type of way of thinking, that would necessitate that Allah oppresses, that you will be punished in the hellfire by something you had no choice in, which does not absolutely make any sense. Why would a person be in the hell based upon acts that he had no control over. Doesn't make any sense. That's why you'll find that these type of matters are from Abtal al-Abatil. They're the most false notions of what is considered false. That's the reason why we teach it. But at the same time, we mention to the people, does these type of beliefs exist today? We say yes. And we said it's called Kasb al-Ash'ari. Kasb al-Ash'ari is we'll discuss in a minute. But let me keep reading. So Shaykh al-Islam says, وَمَنْ يَكُ خَصْمًا لِلْمُهَيْمِنِ يَرْجِعًا عَلَى أُمِّ رَدْسٍ هَاوِيًا فِي الْحَفِيرَةِ ويدعى خصوم الله يوم معادهم إلى النار طرا معشر القدرية سواء نفوه أو سعوا ليخاصموا به الله أو مالوا به للشريعة وأصل ضلال الخلق من كل فرقة هو الخوض في فعل الإله بعلة فإنهم لم يفهموا حكمة له فصاروا على نوع من الجاهلية. Your father, he mentions, it says, whoever argues with the most dominant, who's Allah, he says he will fall back upon his what? His face, falling into the pit of hell. Meaning, similar to what Iblis did. When Iblis, when he fell into this great crime of his arrogance, trying to blame Allah, what happened? He became from the accursed. So not only did he fall into affairs of arrogance, belligerence, haughtiness, and using the element or the manner which he's created to think he was better than Adam, he also fell into the affairs of the Qadr. You'll find that the great Imam Rabi' ibn Hadi Madkhali, Hafidhullah, that he said that here is to show that the devil does believe in the affairs of the Qadr. Even though he used al-ihtijaj bil-Qadr liyubarrir sharrahu. He said, generally we can extract from this ayah, Surah Al-A'raf, that the devil believes in the Qadr, even though he tried to use it as an argument. But the point of the matter is, it shows, number one, he believed in the divine decree of Allah. But he used it in a manner that was what? Displeasing. Displeasing to Allah. By what? By saying it's your fault. So based upon that, this type of way of thinking, like we said, is rejected. And listen what Shaykh al-Islam goes on to say. He said, that's why he said that those who argue with the most dominant, they will fall upon their faces, being what? That they will plunge in the pit of hell. Based upon what happened with Iblis. And similar to those who traverse the same path of the devil. Now this is what he says. وَيُدَعَ خُصُومَ اللَّهِ يَوْمَ مَعَدِّهِمْ إِلَى النَّارِ طَرَّ الْمَعْشَ الْقَدَرِيَّةِ. He said that those who argue with Allah will be called on the day of resurrection. He says that they will be pushed violently what? In the hellfire. The group of those who deviated in the qadr of Allah. The Qadariyah. He said whether they affirm it or negate it. What does Shaykh al-Islam mean by that? We already discussed this last class. He says whether they affirm it or negate it. What is he speaking about? This is basically talking about the two groups of the Qadariyah which we discussed last class. You have those who went to the opposite side of each extreme, in which they what? Fell into something great with Allah. Which is, number one, you have those who believe that Allah does not decree anything for the creation. Nor does Allah know about it until it happens. So those on this type of extreme negated the qadr of Allah. They say that Allah has not written anything down. Rather, you'll find that they go to another furthest what? Extent to say that Allah does not even have knowledge of the affair until it occurs. So those are ones that negated. They went to the extreme of negation. Then you have those who what? Set out and negated in another extreme, where they do affirm that Allah has total domination until they remove the will of choice from the creation. So you see each extreme. So then one person went from one extreme to another extreme. And that's the devil's plot for every human being. He wants him never to be in a moderate approach in anything, in any of his affairs. Especially in his belief system. He always wants him to be on one side of one extreme. Never to be in the middle, where Ahlul Sunnah are Ahlul Wasat. The people of the Sunnah are the people of moderation. Where they do not exceed the bounds on what? Any side. You'll find in the Qadariyah where Shaitan took them to one extent and then you'll find the shaitan took another group to another what? Extent, or another type of extreme. So that's what you'll find the Shaykh al-Islam is mentioning here. He said whether they negate or whether they set out. But they are considered those who argue with Allah. And they argue in order for what? Against Allah's legislation. Now listen to this last part so we can continue. He said that the origin of the misguidance of the creation from every group is them indulging in the actions of Allah, of trying to find why Allah did that or allowed it to happen. Why did Allah create me to have no parents? Why did Allah create me where I have no father? Why did Allah? Why did Allah? Why did Allah? Why did Allah? He said, now this is what Shaykh al-Islam said, فَإِنَّهُمْ لَمْ يَفْهَمُوا حِكْمَةً لَهُ فَصَارُوا عَلَى نَوْعٍ مِنَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ. He said, for verily they did not understand the wisdom of why Allah allowed it to happen. And they've been, as a result of it, what came as a result of it? They became in a manner which is considered a type of jahiliyyah. Meaning, what type of jahiliyyah? Whether it be in the affairs of like we said, from the deviant sects, and this is the example of it, where the person believes Allah Ta'ala, either Allah has nothing written down, or he has no knowledge of the affair until it happens, or you'll find that the people now blame Allah for certain affairs until they're angry with Allah. As you'll find from the creation, like we mentioned, from within society, especially the youth, because they don't understand these matters, you'll find that they blame Allah. It's Allah's fault. What was my sin of why when I was born into this world that I had no mother and father, that I was given up for adoption? Or what was my sin that I came here that I was born black? What was my sin that I came into this land or I was born in a certain place where I had no food? Or you'll find certain lands where they have all types of droughts or maybe some type of problems within their sustenance, until you'll find that certain kids are deprived and they die of starvation. All these affairs, brothers and sisters, as we mentioned, all falls into these matters what we're speaking about now. Allah allowed that to happen for a reason. Maybe He wants those children to have high degrees in paradise. You do not know. Because the comparison to the temporary life of this world to what's considered eternal for the rest of time is no comparison. How in the world do you think you can compare the mere small years and the small time frame we live in this dunya to what's considered eternal? How dare you try to compare that to what's coming? So what we deem as big in this world in comparison to what's coming is no comparison. Maybe Allah allowed those children to die and be tested in that state so He can give them something great eternally in the hereafter. Those matters, like we said, and what Shaykh al-Islam just said, everyone, wake up. And what Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah mentioned here, he said that the origin of the misguidance of the creation from every deviant sect. He said, وَالْخَوْض فِي فِعْلِ إِلَهِ بِعِلَّتِهِ. He said it is indulging in the actions of Allah by trying to find out why. What was the reason? What was the wisdom? Why did Allah make Fajr 2 rak'at allowed? Why did Allah make Dhuhr 4? Why not 5? Why not 6? Some affairs are what, everyone? Submission to Allah Ta'ala, into His infinite wisdom, and that Allah Ta'ala, that He knows the affairs of the creation, of what befits them, and what will suit them, and what will be a benefit for them, and their worldly and their hereafter, better than us. Rather, it's no comparison at all, in comparison to the knowledge of Allah Ta'ala. So that's what we mentioned last class, in what? In brief. Let's keep going. طيب. So Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah was clarifying the aqidah of Abu Hanifa, Nu'man ibn Thabit, ibn Zuta, al-Kufi, al-Asl. Anyway, he says you'll find that he mentions, it says about the qadr of Allah. Let's read the sharh. We was in the midst of explaining this. Anyway, So, the affairs of the qadr of Allah Ta'ala, where the people negate the qadr, as we talked about, they were two sects, where they were on the extreme, where they negated the knowledge of Allah, and they negated that it was written. Then you'll find that there were people that came later, that they negated the will of Allah, and they negated that He created the actions of the people. But we mentioned that. Is it still present today? We said yes. It's called Kasb al-Ash'ari. Kasb al-Ash'ari. Kasb al-Ash'ari, you'll find that they say, is a matter that's impossible, and it cannot be understood. For any Muslim that hears the so-called ideologies of Kasb al-Ash'ari, it would not be what? It would not be an affair that would cause surety within an individual. As we know, brothers and sisters, Islam came in order to make affairs, as it makes sense, of things that the most important of all matters are easy and basic to understand. For example, Allah is one. Simple. It doesn't take a rocket science genius to know that Allah is one. However, you'll find that these affairs in the other religions, you'll find that the affairs become confusing. God is 33, God is broken off, God to the end of it. Similar to that is this matter. As you'll find that the people who are upon the correct creed come with affairs that make sense in the mind. We believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed matters, and that everything happens in this existence in accordance to His knowledge, in accordance to what He written down, in accordance to what He wills to happen of good and evil, and in accordance to what He's created. At the same time, He gives the creation what? Proper decision, He gives them the mashi'ah or the will to make decisions. And that's why they will be rewarded, or that's the reason why they'll be punished. Simple and clear. However, we know that the will of the creation follows behind the will of the Creator. Simple, clear, doesn't take a rocket science genius to know that what? That's the matter. But what's confusing is when you hear, for example, a Muslim comes and say, the affairs have been forced upon me. I had no choice. When you hear those type of matters, when a person embraces Islam, they will say that's confusing. How is it that I'm forced? So what's the reason why I'm going to hell then if Allah has decreed for me the hellfire? What's the reason why I'm going to paradise if Allah has decreed for me paradise? It doesn't make any sense. So Allah created the hellfire out of oppression, and He created paradise just to joke and play around. So that's when you hear these type of ideologies, it doesn't make absolute any sense that I was forced. However, the affair of actions being forced takes place within the Muslims of today who are upon Ash'ariyah, and they call it Kasb al-Ash'ari. Kasb, as I said last class, means acquisition. Meaning, the Ash'ari basically, they say, you did the act, but it's ascribed to you what? Metaphorically. Meaning, the trees that blow, or the leaves that fall, or the animals that move, or anything that you see from the trees blowing, all of it in reality does not move. Rather, it's metaphorically moving. But the actions at the end of the day is Allah. So Allah Ta'ala is the one that does the acts when the trees move, or when the animals move. It doesn't make absolute any sense. That's why you find that the Muslims of today, this type of way of thinking exists. That's the reason why we teach it, in order for the Muslims to be on guard against it. Because this is considered deviation in the divine decree of Allah Ta'ala. For it's incumbent upon one to be upon the belief of Angel Jibreel. Who's Angel Jibreel? The one who's been entrusted with revelation, who Allah sent down to the Messenger of Allah and conveyed it to him, until Angel Jibreel himself even what? Believed in the Qadr, and he acknowledged the sound belief that the Messenger of Allah explained to him. When he said to the Messenger of Allah, Sadaqt, you spoke the truth. The angel himself, Jibreel alayhi salam, said to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, what is Iman? And the Messenger of Allah explained it. And tu'mina billah, wa malaikatihi, wa kutubihi, wa rusuli, wa yawm al-akhir, wa tu'mina bil qadari, khayrihi wa sharrihi. That you believe in the Qadr, the divine decree of Allah, the good of it and the evil of it. Meaning Jibreel said, you are what? You are right, and you spoke the truth. Angel Jibreel believes in the qadr of Allah. Tabaraka wa ta'ala. He affirmed it in the hadith. He affirmed that in the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said, they explained what is Iman, and like we said, Angel Jibreel confirmed it. At the same time, Angel Jibreel, along with the greatest of all prophets and messengers, Muhammad bin Abdullah, did not believe that Allah forced him to do anything, or that the actions of the servants were not what? Well, they didn't have any choice, rather Allah is the one that did it. So let's explain. Let me give some more clarification in this regard. So listen. أن الفاعل الحقيقي في أفعال العباد هو الله. This belief is what they call كسب الأشعري. He says that they believe that the one who truly does acts in actuality from the actions of the human beings is Allah Himself. So the ascription of these acts to the servants is a what? A metaphoric ascription. A metaphoric ascription, meaning it's not real. For example, the great Imam Muhammad al-Mali says, Al-Ma'u Jari. He said the water is flowing and the trees are moving. He said, for verily the ascription of these type of movements and acts of these type of jamadat, or these type of inanimate objects, is metaphorically moving and it's not real. Any Muslim that comes to Islam and hears this nonsense, is it going to cause surety or is it going to cause doubt? It's going to cause doubt. They hear this nonsense, they're going to be, huh? This doesn't make any sense. So the water is flowing, the trees are moving, the ascription of these acts to these type of inanimate objects is a metaphoric ascription. It's not real. So basically those who are upon Ash'ariyah made the Muslims like this, or made the servant like this. He's the same way. So when you do acts, you're doing it by your ability, your own decision, your own will, but it's metaphoric, it's not real. In reality, Allah is the one that does it. Does that make any sense? Does that make any sense? Doesn't make any sense. He said, هَؤُلَاء ضَلَالُهُمْ لَيْسَ بِأَقَلْ مِنْ ضَلَالِ الْقَدَرِيَّةِ كُلُّهُمْ ضُلَّالٌ. This type of misguidance is no more or no more less than the misguidance of the Qadariyah. All of them are misguided in this affair. In which you'll find that the Salaf are upon, that the Ibad, what is the correct belief, is that the servants, they do acts by their own decision, by their own ability, and by their own will. Except we know that their will follows behind the will of who? The Creator. وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ. You do not will unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills. However, they have the characteristic of ability, they have the characteristic of will or intent, and they have the ability of what? Choosing. When you stand up right now, everyone, even when you write in your books right now, and those who are sitting, and those when you stand up, does anyone feel that you're being forced to do anything? Rather, you're doing it by your own what? By your own will. Your own what? Ability, and by your own choice. And that's the reason why, like we mentioned, it said, why people will receive their reward in the day of resurrection, and certain people with iyadha billah will receive their what? Punishment based upon what? Bad decisions, bad choices you made. That's the reason why there's a hellfire, and that's the reason why there's a what? Paradise. Why, everyone? Because of decisions, because of your intent, and because of your will to do certain acts. If good, then it's good, and if it's evil, then it's what? Then it's evil. Is it clear, everyone? Fine. So that's what we said. So that's basically to sum up those who believe in this type of deviation with the Sha'ira, which is called Kasb al-Ash'ari. You will ask them a question. Based upon what are the people being punished upon? And based upon what are the people being rewarded upon? He said, verily we know that the servant is rewarded, or he'll be given his honorable, noble reward upon his what? Upon his ikhtiyari, upon the decisions he made, and the obedience that he put forth. Meaning based upon the voluntary acts that he did. Not the forced acts, the voluntary acts. لأنه أتى الطاعة باختياره. Why? Because you'll find that he committed the act of obedience by his own decision, his own ability, and by his own intent. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no doubt, we say that Allah did create it. What we mean create, everyone? Meaning that Allah created the will, the intent, and the decision making. He created you with these characteristics. So in actuality, Allah creates the actions, even though at the same time, you have the ability, you have the will, and you have the intent. Allah instilled in the human beings these characteristics. So that in actuality, Allah created us, and He created what, everyone? What we do. Is it clear? He created us and what we do. When we say He created us and what we do, meaning He created you and created the characteristics that you utilize every day to carry out those acts, such as intent, will, choice. Is it clear? وَجَعَلَهُ يَفْعَلُ بِمَحْضِ إِرَادَتِهِ لَيْسَ بِمَجْبُورٍ وَإِنْ أَتَى مَعْصِيَةً أَتَى كَذَلِكَ بِاخْتِيَارِهِ وَلَمْ يُجْبِرْهُ أَحَدٌ لِذَلِكَ يُثَابُ عَلَى الْحَسَنَاتِ وَيُعَاقَبُ عَلى السَّيِّئَاتِ. He said, for verily when he does these acts, he did it by his mere intent. He's not forced. And if he does an act of disobedience, similar to that, he does that with his own decision. No one forced him. And for that reason, he will be rewarded for his good deeds, and he will be punished for his evil ones. This is the correct belief and the correct path. So that's the affair of the Qadr, in which Abu Hanifa, as we said, everyone, shows that Abu Hanifa was sound in the affair and his belief as far as the Qadr. Is it clear? So Abu Muti', if you look at what he mentioned, when he was asking Abu Hanifa about these affairs, he was investigating, or asking rather, excuse me. So notice he says, Abu Hanifa, then asked him the question about commanding the good and forbidding the evil. He said, فَإِمَّا يَأْمُرُ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَى عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ فيتبعه على ذلك أناس فيخرج عن الجماعة هل ترى ذلك؟ قال لا. قلت ولما وقد أمر الله ورسوله بالأمر بالمعروف والنهي عن المنكر وهو فريضة واجبة. قال كذلك ولكن ما يفسدون أكثر ما يصلحون من سفك الدماء واستحلال الحرام. Listen to what Abu Hanifa says in the affairs of commanding the good and forbidding the evil. As we know, these are the matters in which the deviant sect called the Khawarij fell into in the time of old, and similar to what they're falling into today. Listen to what Abu Hanifa says. So Abu Muti' al-Hakam ibn Abdullah al-Balkhi continues to ask him. He says, what do you say concerning commanding the good and forbidding the evil? He says, and that they follow upon them. People who set out to go outside, united by the Muslims, in order to what? Overthrow the rulers, overthrow the leaders, and actualize the so-called way of establishing justice within the land by utilizing this evil method. He said, do you see that to be correct? Listen to what Abu Hanifa says. قال لا. Simple. He said no. لا. قلت. I said. ولما. Why? وقد أمر الله ورسوله بالأمر بالمعروف والنهي عن المنكر. He said why? When indeed Allah and His Messenger commanded to command the good and forbid the evil. And He said وهو فريضة واجبة. And it's an obligatory duty that needs to be carried out. Listen to what Abu Hanifa says. قال. He says likewise, no doubt. Commanding the good and forbidding the evil is something that's known. It's from our religion. However, he's basically criticizing the what? The method. The method is what? Incorrect. He says, why would they corrupt and bring of evil is more than what they're doing as far as their claim of rectification. Why? By shedding blood, of innocent people, and what? Deeming to be lawful what Allah made unlawful, meaning of people's sacred lives and preservation of life. قال وذكر الكلام في قتال الخوارج والبغاة. Then he started mentioning speech concerning killing the Khawarij or fighting the Khawarij and the Bugha, and those who transgress, even though they're not considered from the Khawarij. إلى أن قال Abu Hanifa. He says, Amman, now he's going to speak about the affairs concerning Allah's aboveness over the heavens. Fine, so let's go back. Let's explain that statement about commanding the good and forbidding the evil. I'm sorry, everyone. So, based upon this, Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, what is he doing? So Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah brought this aqidah of Abu Hanifa in order to make it binding upon those who claim that they follow Abu Hanifa. This is from the mazaya, from the distinguishing qualities of this book that Shaykh al-Islam wrote. So this book, Al-Hamawiyyah, from its great characteristics that Shaykh al-Islam made it distinguished with, number one, is that he brought the aqidah of all of those who claim that they follow them, but at the same time, utilizing it to make what? An argument against them. Are you truly following these scholars that you claim you following or not? Because you don't blind follow a scholar in the areas of fiqh, which are the branches, but you don't follow him in his what? In his foundation, what made him great in the first place. It doesn't make any sense. So why don't you follow him in his belief? His belief is what made him great. Because if he wasn't upon what was correct or sound in these matters, he would not be considered a great scholar at all. And no one will follow him from the Muslims. So the affair is to look at what? What was his belief? His belief, and utilizing this method that Shaykh al-Islam as an argument of those who fell into these type of what? Errors, especially those who are upon Maturidiyah. As we'll talk about the deviant sect of the Muslims called the Maturidis. You'll find that the majority of them are deviated in Aqidah, but they say they follow Abu Hanifa in fiqh, which doesn't make sense. How are you deviant in the affair of your belief in your foundation as a Muslim fundamentally, but then the areas which was connected with the branches, you blindly follow Abu Hanifa. So you deviate in Aqidah, but you blind follow him in the branches of affairs that are what? That are so-called considered in the areas of fiqh or jurisprudence. So you'll find that the majority of those who are upon what they call Maturidiyah. What is Maturidiyah? Maturidiyah is similar to Ash'ariyah. It's basically the same thing. They're only different in a couple of affairs. But the Maturidi or the Maturidis or the Ash'aris is basically the same. The Maturidis basically have a characteristic, as we know, the Ash'ari believe in the 7 characteristics of Allah. That's it. Even though there's a little bit more details in it. The Maturidis believe in the same 7 characteristics of Allah that the Ash'ari affirm, but they add one another characteristic called Sifatul Takween, the characteristic of bringing things into existence or what? Forming it. They call it Sifatul Takween. I don't feel like getting into this. That's just a side benefit. That's a side note. Whoever doesn't understand, don't worry about it. At any rate, the majority of the Muslim world, of those you'll find that they follow Abu Mansur al-Maturidi. That's his name. You'll find that they follow Abu Mansur al-Maturidi, especially in the area of today, everyone in Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan is where Imam Bukhari is from. And also a lot of other scholars. From them, Imam Tirmidhi. If we know currently today, the land of Uzbekistan is where Imam Bukhari is from. And also the Imam Tirmidhi. And also the scholars who are from Samarkand. And also, and in addition to that, some who are upon the greatest atrocities in Islam also. Who are they? From them is the individual, I don't know if you guys are familiar. What is his name? It's not Ibn al-Sab'een. This, it just came to my mind who it is. Oh, astaghfirullah to be there. It's not Ibn al-Farid. I'll come back to it next class. I'll come back to it in a moment. It's going to come to me. But anyway, Uzbekistan in the country, not Pakistan, Pakistan, Uzbekistan, you'll find that what is prevalent is that the Muslims follow Abu Mansur al-Maturidi. Abu Mansur al-Maturidi in his Aqidah. Abu Mansur al-Maturidi, his Aqidah is similar to Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari. When Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari was upon the deviant way of the Kullabiyah, that was before his Tawbah. Because we know Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari, rahimahullah, made Tawbah, rahimahullah. طيب, the Ash'a'ira, al-Kullabiyah, and the Maturidi are similar in their Aqidah. There's certain differences, but it's basically the same. There's a couple of other affairs that they differ with them in, but it's basically the same. طيب, that region of Uzbekistan you'll find was prevalent is that the majority of the Muslims are upon the Aqidah of Abu Mansur al-Maturidi. At the same time, you'll find that the so-called madhab in jurisprudence they're upon is Abu Hanifa. They claim that they're Hanafi in their fiqh. So they're deviant in Aqidah, following Abu Mansur al-Maturidi, and in the areas of fiqh, they blindly follow Abu Hanifa. That's only the point I'm making. Is it clear, everyone? That's the point I'm making. Especially that affair is prevalent in Uzbekistan and in Turkey. In Turkey also it's widespread. You'll find that they so-called blindly follow the madhab al-Hanafi. طيب. Those affairs of commanding the good and forbidding the evil. Shaykh al-Islam, he conveyed the matter of what Abu Hanifa was upon in these matters. Commanding the good, forbidding the evil. The Khawarij of the time of old, you'll find tashaddadu fi bab al-amr bil-ma'ruf. The Khawarij and the Mu'tazila, you'll find that they were very stern in these matters until they fell into being extreme. And being extreme. Like we said, the plan and the plot of the devil that he has plotted against every human being is to make them extreme in something. Either to make them extreme, starting with extreme in their affairs of their religion and their belief. Or he wants them to get on the other side of the extreme where they're too lax. So they either make them too extreme or to make them too lax. Especially in the areas of belief. Sit in the chair, sure. Get a chair. Sit in the chair. طيب. The Khawarij are considered a people who are too, if you want to say for lack of better words, too hot. They were too hot. Until they went to the point that they utilized the matters as considered from commanding the good and forbidding the evil. Until they went out and set out to overthrow the rulers by using this kalimat al-haq, by using this word of truth. So anyone that knows commanding the good and forbidding the evil, they'll say what? That's correct. But they'll use that guise to do something evil. So in order to justify something, you have to put in front of it what? Something that make the people gravitate towards it. Similar to BLM, Black Lives Matter. Similar thing, every time. Everyone wants to put a title, make the people gravitate, not realizing that the intent behind it was something else. But a person is saying, listen, we're just going to use you guys just to give you some money that we're going to put in our pockets and walk off, nobody would give them any money. Nor anyone would pay any attention, right? However, similar to what has taken place today, similar to what also had taken place in the past, you'll find that the people of deviation, or the devil, will always use something of the truth to have the people gravitate towards it in order to mislead them by it. From that title is here, where the Khawarij utilize the title what? Commanding the good and forbidding the evil. Once they use that, they now set out their what? Set out with their evil intent and their ulterior motives and set out their plans in order to overthrow the rulers and the leaders, and also to claim Muslims outside the fold of Islam in order to shed their blood unjustly, and to wreak havoc upon society and to kill innocent bystanders. And this is what they utilized. So Abu Hanifa was asked about this. Similar to what happened upon Ali ibn Abi Talib. Well, Ali ibn Abi Talib, the great Sahabi, when they gathered in that place called Harura, in which you'll find that the Khawarij had other names, such as Haruriyin. Why were they called Haruriyin? Because it was an inscription to the land where they fought. What happened is, as usual, what did they do, everyone? They misinterpreted verses in the Quran. They did not return their affairs back to the companions in order to attain the sound understanding in those affairs. So when they didn't return their affairs back to the Sahaba, attaining the correct sound understanding of the verses in the Quran, they fell into misguidance. Until they became people who's considered Muslim outwardly, but in the hereafter they were considered the dogs of hell. Why, everyone? They held on to those doubts until the point where even they themselves set out to kill Ali ibn Abi Talib, radiyallahu anhu. And they declared him to be a kafir, a disbeliever, and they what? فَخَرَجَ إِلَيْهِمْ. As we know what happened with that great Sahabi, Tarjuman al-Quran, the greatest of the Sahaba who explained the Quran, Abdullah ibn Abbas was the one that set out in order to what? Carry out the mission to clarify to them. Notice Abdullah ibn Abbas, how the Sahaba were men. Abdullah ibn Abbas, as Ali ibn Abi Talib said to Abdullah ibn Abbas, he said, I'm afraid that they might do something. He said, don't worry about it. Look how many people were what? Who were gathered, who were misled. They said it was 6,000. One man went to 6,000 people. He didn't call, is the coast clear? One man went to 6,000 people. They didn't afraid no one except Allah. 6,000. That's to let you know how heavyweight the Sahaba were in their faith and in their knowledge and how well grounded they were. And they didn't fear no one except Allah. Us today, totally different. We're scared to advise one person with respect. To the point we have to hide behind certain computers and send messages that are from unknown accounts and all this other nonsense, because we are afraid to face-to-face advise a person with what? With respect and dignity and manners, and say what you have to say. That's not how we are today. Abdullah ibn Abbas went straight to the Khawarij. 6,000 people. And said what he had to say. Until the point, how many people came? 2,000 returned. 2,000 people returned back to the house. 2,000 people, and he removed the doubts they were what? Affected by. Until 2,000 were what? 2,000 fought, and Ali ibn Abi Talib had to fight the rest. He had to fight the rest, and he had to what? Battle them. Why? Ali ibn Abi Talib did not fight them, every brothers and sisters, until they started to what? Set out in the lands killing people. That's when Ali had to what? That's when he had to what? Step in and do something about it. When they started to now declare the Muslims to be disbelievers, and they started wreaking havoc upon society, they were killing people and hurting people, that's when Ali stepped in and had to stop them. Until the point where certain amongst them had to be what? Killed. Where the Messenger of Allah even said that killing them will have in it reward with Allah, because of the type of evil that these people will what? Possess, and the magnitude of it. Until this very day, you see what the Messenger of Allah said today is correct, 100%. And what the Messenger of Allah had informed is exactly what's taking place in society. Every time that these people come, and no matter in what country and land, you'll find that there's absolute what? Mass hysteria. Chaos. And killing and the shedding blood of, and they don't even care whether it's innocent children or it's what? Or if it's women. They don't care. And why the Messenger of Allah gave this ruling in regards to them. How once their hearts became corrupt by the poison of innovation and the poison of this type of sickness and how it will corrupt their belief until they attain the characteristics of being the dogs of hell. Wal-iyadhu billah. Is it clear, everyone? Yeah. Jay, we'll stop here. We'll stop here, inshallah. Any questions about the lesson, anyone? Any questions about the lesson? As you'll find that the great Imam Shaykh ibn Hadi and other from those from the scholars of today, they even face the same problem. You'll find that there were people that used to send them emails from fraudulent accounts. And this is their way of people giving them advice. Like cowards. If this is your way of getting advice, I don't need your advice. Come to me as a man to my face and say to me respectfully. And say to me with manners and respect and dignity and honor. That's how men respect another man. When you're able to come to a man brave and say him in his face and say it to him with evidence, proofs, honor, respect, and shown that you were guidance for that person and gentleness with your brother, that is what will earn you respect. Is it clear, everyone? Whether or not the person takes it or accepts it, that's what Allah. But the person, like we said, this is how the Sahaba were. They came to men, advised them man to man, went to them directly. And notice Abdullah ibn Abbas advised 6,000 men by himself. Not 600. 6,000. You understand, everyone? 6,000. 600. Can you imagine us? 600 people standing right here. Advising 600 people. 6,000. One man. That's not strength and bravery, then I don't know what is. That's how the Sahaba were. That's how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed them to be the greatest of creation, but to the point when they said statements, it penetrated the hearts of the people. I'll tell you, he was able to affect 2,000 people. And they returned back to the haq where Ali ibn Abi Talib had to kill the rest and fight the rest. Fight. Any other questions, anyone? No, we'll stop here, inshallah. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.